Got one? Yep. First fish of the day. First that's in.
Baby, hey, the confidence just went through the roof, baby. Look at that. First one.
Beautiful.
Got him early. Tough practice, baby. Here we go, the classic. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This one's gonna be all about the Bassmaster Classic. For me, this was a tournament that it only comes around once a year, and I really wanted to win this one. Unfortunately, I didn't get it done, but I'm gonna break it down for you in this video and show you exactly what I was doing and how I was doing it and what I expected throughout the week as the Bassmaster Classic rolled on. So looking at the weather for the Classic, I noticed that we were going to have a lot of wind throughout the week, and day one of practice, the wind blew like 50, and I don't mean a little bit, I mean it blew 50. So practice for me was a little hit and miss. I didn't get a lot of bites, but I was just trying to find a couple areas that, one, I could kind of be protected from the winds that were coming during the tournament because they were shifting. They'd be out of the south one day, the north the next day. So it was a little bit challenging to try to navigate watching the weather and being able to fish in areas that I knew I would be able to compete in the tournament, but also be in areas that I knew fish went and lived on that lake. So practice for me was kind of a wash in a lot of ways just because of the way the wind was blowing. The water in some areas was really dirty. It was a kind of a challenge to figure out what to do and where to do it a week in advance, because we start practice, mind you, on a Friday, and the tournament doesn't start till the next Friday. So there's a whole week of warming weather, cooling weather, wind direction changes. A lot of things happen in that week of the Bassmaster Classic. So it's not like an average tournament or a normal tournament where you go out there, you practice a couple days, then you start the event. Now, I expected going down there that, we'd had several 80-degree days leading up to the event down there, and I thought that the water was going to be warm. Those fish were going to be up on the beds, ready to roll, be able to see them cruising down the banks, things like that. And that was not the case. I know that we had a lot of warm weather, but the water was still cold. It was in the mid-50s, low 50s in some mornings, and then it would get up to close to 60, but those fish just weren't really in that spawn phase like I thought they would be. But I wanted to show you the baits that I used and kind of how I was using them throughout this event. One thing that I really put a lot of time into before the tournament was I really felt like just an old school Texas rig lizard was going to be a big player for me. It's just a 1/4 ounce sinker. This is a Yum 6-inch lizard. It's called dirt purple color. It's my favorite color in all the soft plastics that I use. And I was throwing this on 17-pound Seaguar and VizX fluorocarbon, more or less just using this as a search bait for those fish that were moving up to spawn, sitting around shallow, super shallow cover, because the water there was a little bit low, so a lot of the structure was just 2 feet and less deep. So I wanted something super finessey, but I could still cover a lot of water, and ended up catching a few key fish on this bait throughout the tournament. But it really wasn't like what I thought it was going to be. I really thought I'd be able to take that and just go around the banks and get a lot of bites. I thought numbers of bites was going to be easy. That was not the case. It ended up being very tricky to get those bites. In practice, I found one area where I caught a giant and had 2 or 3 other bites, and I really thought that area was going to play, and it ended up playing huge for one of my competitors who ended up with a top 5 finish. And hats off to him because he whipped me in that area, and I know what I missed and why I missed it. But one thing that I really keyed in on in those areas as the tournament went on was a lot of those bigger fish were still out off that first, I'm gonna say the first row of trees. They were in that 3 to 6 feet range for me, and what I was using was the Yum Christie Critter, and this is ghillie suit color. It's kind of a bluegill. It's got some blue flake in it, some orange flake, some gold flake. It's just a good all-around springtime of the year color. And I was throwing this bait on a 3/8 ounce sinker and just a 4/0 flipping hook. And this is 20-pound Seaguar and VizX. Got the job done for me. I was flipping it anywhere that I thought those fish were just before moving up to the bank to that shallowest cover, but they were on the bottom. Those fish that I caught on this throughout the week were on the bottom, and I really felt like some of those fish may have been spawning on those deeper stumps. And hindsight's always 20/20 vision, but I really feel like some of those fish were spawning, and maybe I was fishing a little too quick through some of those areas and not giving my bait enough time to soak at the base of some of those bigger trees. But the biggest majority of the key bites that I got this week were fish that were sitting, I'm gonna call them total pre-spawn fish. They were fish that were suspending around those trees. I was able to use my Lowrance active target and look at individual trees and see those individual fish sitting around those trees. And I had two different colors of one of my favorite jerkbaits. And this is the Smithwick 5-inch Super Rogue. It's a suspending version.
Big.
Got off? Oh!
Look at that.
Hold that big boy up. Look at that. Let me see him.
Oh my gosh.
Lost him. I don't know what I was gonna say.
A big Smithwick, baby.
All right.
Big hits.
These are custom painted. I get these baits from Pradco and they are completely clear, and I have them custom painted. You can see I have one here that's a more, I call it, it has more body. So it's a white shad color, and this one's more of a transparent color with a nice shad colored belly on it. Starting the event, that area where I caught my bigger fish was real dirty. And with that, I felt like this one that had a lot more white to it was gonna be a lot better. And it ended up being, I caught a 6.5 pounder on it the first day and a couple other fish that really set the tone for the week. And as things started clearing up, and the 2 bass that I weighed in on day 3, again, you say, well, why'd you only catch 2 on day 3? Well, for one, it was tough. And 2, a couple of the key areas that I was looking at to maybe make a jump on day 3, the guy that ended up ultimately winning the event was fishing in those areas, and I didn't want to get in his way for a chance to win, because I know that had the roles been reversed, it would be the same way. So I caught my 2 fish on the final day on this one that's a lot more transparent. You can actually see the beads through the bait. The water was just a lot clearer, calmer in some of those areas. The wind wasn't blowing, the water wasn't dirty. So I always like to have a couple options, but those baits are staples. Anytime you're fishing springtime around big fish, I'm gonna throw that 5-inch Rogue. I know it's an old school bait, but it still absolutely catches big fish. And I was throwing this one on 17-pound Seaguar and VizX. And you say, well, why was you throwing so big of line on a jerkbait? And for me, it's not about trying to get that bait deep. I was literally trying to, one, keep those fish from hanging me in those big trees. Those trees down there are really gnarly and not necessarily a lot of limbs, some of them, but the wood had a lot of shavings on the bark, so your line would hang in those shavings, and it was really hard to get those fish out. Flawless all week, never had any trouble with my line getting those fish away from the trees. But this bait is a staple in my tackle box. Now, you say, why was you throwing such big line even though you're around the trees? Did you have other setups? I did not. I kept it very simple. I've said this a lot in my career. I'm a simple fisherman. So I stuck with a lizard when I was fishing super shallow around that ultra shallow cover. I stuck with the Christie Critter when I was fishing those deeper trees, and then went with the Smithwick Rogue when I was fishing the suspended fish around those trees, or just roaming fish. The last day, the 2 fish that I weighed in were both just swimming out in open water. Again, was able to utilize my Lowrance active target, see those fish. One thing that I wish I would have, you may say, what could you have done different to maybe have a better outcome throughout the week? And I think one thing that cost me in the area that I knew was good was I have a hard time leaving certain little areas to expand on those areas. And you say, why is it that tough? For me, it's about, this week, it was about running around. The backs of those creeks, as you'll see in the video, are full of timber. And I had trails getting into some of those areas, but to go from here to over there into the back of this creek, it would take 5 minutes to idle. And as you're fishing and your day's getting away from you, you start strategizing, do I want to go in the back of this creek or do I want to work my way to the mouth of the creek? And I think that's one of the biggest things that cost me potentially a top 10 or maybe even winning this event, was being able to hunker down in one area and just know that the fish were there. I could catch them with the techniques that I was using. And maybe I would have done that a little bit different if I could go back and redo it. Yeah, all in all, a great week. Making the Sunday cut is the ultimate goal because it gives you a chance on Sunday. Just wasn't able to capitalize the way I wanted on Sunday. Again, huge congrats to Easton Fothergill on an amazing tournament. If you don't know Easton, you need to go follow his social channels and read his story on his journey to the Bassmaster Elites and ultimately to winning the Bassmaster Classic. He's a true inspiration to all of us, and his will to fight and to come back from adversity and to be the Bassmaster Classic champion. He's going to be a great champion, and my hat's off to you, Easton. Great week for me, quick turnaround. Got my kids' high school tournament in Oklahoma this week. I'll leave in a couple days and then come home from that, and then we go to North Carolina to a new fishery on the Elite Series for me. Excited for that one, and it's springtime, baby. I love it. Weather's warming up, fishing's picking up all over the country, and I'm just happy to be living this dream. Appreciate all the support, appreciate the fans, the texts, the calls, the sponsors. I appreciate every bit of it, and it's just an awesome journey to be on. Thanks for watching, guys.